Our guest in the studio is Steve Courtney from the Mark Twain House. First of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Well, very exciting. Love Mark Twain. He's got probably some of my favorite witticisms. But how are things? I haven't gone to the Mark Twain House in 8 years or something like that, and I kind of forget about it. How's it going over there?
Things are right now going very well. You may have heard a few years ago that we had a financial slump for a few minutes, and fortunately a lot of people came to our aid, and the place is now really thriving. We had record attendance last year. We benefited to some extent from the tremendous publicity about the centennial of Mark Twain's death. Then, toward the end of the year, his autobiography came out, the autobiography that he said should not be published for 100 years. And that suddenly brought a whole new burst of interest. And then of course, a little later on, there was a controversy involving a new edition of Huckleberry Finn. I don't know if you heard of that would clean up the language in that book once and for all, according to the fellow who proposed
the N-word.
The N-word, exactly.
Because people are so sensitive about words these days, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it was it was a professor out in Alabama who had just gotten tired of this word standing between him and his students, to give him credit. I mean, he really was frustrated with what had happened over the years. He wasn't just some sort of a PC crazy, bureaucrat, but it was the wrong decision, but once again, it brought Mark Twain and his incredible way of doing things out into the public eye again.
Yeah, bad PR is not even, there's no PR is bad PR.
That's right.
Kind of a thing. Well, how much does it cost to actually run the Mark Twain House every year? I understand there's variable costs and such, but what's the ballpark number?
Ooh, I think you've caught me at a loss. Luckily, I don't have to do a lot with the money.
Question 2. Only two questions, folks. It's a new record.
I can make up a number.
Ray Dunaway, eat your heart out.
Not enough. We don't get enough money. Let me put it. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Answer,
we should get more.
How much do you bring in now?
How much do we bring in, or
how much? Well,
let me put it in terms of visitation, because that's the record that we had last year was 70,000. We'd had sort of a 60,000 during the year. That includes school groups that come quite regularly during the school year to our museum and to the house. It includes visitors from all over the country, every state in the union, and dozens of foreign countries. We get. Germans are very interested in Mark Twain. Russians, back during the Soviet period, that was one of the few writers that they could read. So that
я comrade, Lublю Mark Twain.
Exactly, right. So we're really doing pretty well.
Well, before we give away too many of the answers in the Egghead quiz, maybe we can do the quiz and you can help me facilitate getting the right answers.
Sure.
And then we can talk about all the fun stuff in the Mark Twain House and Mark Twain himself. So you guys all have your cards ready?
Yes.
Ready.
Okay, here it is. Let me get my little pen so I can write down.
I got you this week.
Okay, here it is. Question number 1, 5 questions. Question number 1, Dave Moore is the defending champion. How many books did Mark Twain write? Answer A, only 2, Huck Finn and the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. B, 28 plus numerous short stories. C, 74, first author to write his age in books. He died when he was 74 years old. He had 74 books. Or D, over 200, most of them being nonfiction. So what do we think here for your answers? Man. We have B, B, B. What do we say, Steve?
I would say B.
B is the correct answer. 28 plus numerous short stories. Very good. Everybody gets to the point. We got Mike, Dave, and Caitlin. All right, question number 2. You can play along at home here. He was born on Monday, November 30th, 1835 in Florida. What U.S. state was he born in? A, Missouri, B, Kentucky, C, Louisiana, D, Florida, winning.
Wait, you said it in the question.
He was born On Monday, November 30th, 1835 in Florida, what U.S. state was he born in?
Right.
Missouri, Kentucky, Louisiana, or, as Charlie Sheen would say, duh, Florida, winning. And the answer is Missouri. Steve?
Missouri.
Missouri, Florida, Missouri. That is
Florida was the town.
MDK.
Exactly.
I thought I was very clever
Is
with
Charlie
that
playing
question.
along with us tonight?
Very
Charlie.
clever.
I just, I had a little Charlie Sheen moment that I used to For his humorous letters, sometimes he used what other pen name? Is it A, Chauncey McGillicuddy, B, Barbara Wawa, C, don't give it away. God, Courtney. C, I am Keating. Got a play on words. I am kidding. I am Keating. Or D, Thomas Jefferson Snodgrass. What do we think? What do we think? What do we think? And C, once again, Dave pulls ahead with Snodgrass.
I really thought I had that one.
Very good. Oh, taking a little early lead here. What room did Mark Twain do much of his writing? A, the front parlor where he could get a good view of the world and fodder for his stories. B, the billiard room, a.k.a. his man cave. C, the plant-filled conservatory with bay windows. Or D, the carriage house, a quiet escape from his constant fanatical callers. A, B, C, or D. And we have Caitlin, who's not... Steve, what do you think?
It's B.
It is B, the billiard room.
Nice.
Wow, this is getting interesting, Caitlin. You could tie it up if you. Caitlin's strategy here is whatever they answer, you can't answer that because you got to tie him up.
He did write in the carriage house too.
I'm sure he did, but I completely made that up on my own. I didn't even know if he had a carriage house. I just kind of threw it in there.
He wrote in the hayloft until the smell of the horses drove him out. I'm not kidding.
That's how long we stay in the studio.
That's about it. Yeah. Until the smell of Caitlin drives us out.
No, I was just saying the other way around. I stay until the man cave fumigates me out.
All right, last question. Very interesting. 2 for Caitlin. Who got that one? That was Mike. I put B. 3 for Mike, 3 for Dave. What was the Mark Twain house not used for? What was the Mark Twain house not used for? A, a school. B, an apartment building. C, a library. D, a voting location. So school, apartment building, library, voting location.
Oh,
Mike cheating off of Caitlin.
probably not a smart move, Mike. I don't have a good track record.
And Steve, what was the Mark Twain house not used for?
As far as I know, it was never a voting location.
It was never a voting location. That is correct. Mike
Good time to
Kaiser
cheat off me,
is
Mike.
the big winner, even though he cheated off of Caitlin. But very good, very good, very
I
good.
gave you that one.
Dave, I'm
can't
sorry,
believe you trusted
dethroned
me.
here.
I know.
Dethroned.
Should I open the prize even though I...
Oh, did you get it?
Brought the
Let's see.
prize?
Let's
Yes.
see. Let's yeah.
Oh,
well,
boy.
you got the
Pass
prize, so
around.
we have a new Egghead award that will sit in everyone's
When one
cubby
is
holes
smart,
over
they
here.
are often like a war zone.
Oh, there you go. It's an owl. If you can't see that.
How Athenian.
You are the wise one tonight,
And,
Michael.
and let me
Thank
tell you,
you,
when,
thank
when I
you.
said go ahead, make it gaudy, you sure did.
Good following directions.
So this is fascinating, though. 28 books. I have not. I mean, I am someone who has books up the yin yang, and Mark Twain is one of my favorite. 28 books. I can't imagine that. Are all of these of novel size, 100 pages or more, or are there a lot of novellas in there? Or?
There are a lot of novellas. There are a lot of short works that were published as books, but we might call them a short story published as a book. He wrote a very bawdy one called 1601, which you could, is just a few pages, but because of the subject matter, it had to be published as a separate book privately and sort of privately circulated among
So
only a few
1601
friends.
being like the year 1601?
The year 1601.
So let's see, we have Tudor, Stuart, England going on. We have Shakespeare is still writing.
That's right. Shakespeare is a character in this.
Shakespeare is a
little
character in
Yes.
it, really?
I can't say on radio exactly what it's about. Let me think.
Is it that dirty?
It is very dirty.
Really?
Wow.
What he was doing, he was researching medieval times because he was writing a kid's book, The Prince and the Pauper. So he was looking into the Elizabethan age.
Okay.
And he discovered that people were a lot more frank about things like bodily functions and procreation
yeah, absolutely.
than they were in his Victorian time when everything was kind of kept under a doily.
Well, who else makes an appearance in 1601? Does Ben Jonson
Ben
make an
Jonson?
appearance? Does he really?
Ben
Oh, I gotta
Jonson,
go read it now. This is
Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, Queen Elizabeth herself.
oh well, of course, sure. Why
So,
not throw her in there?
there you go.
What fun! Well, that's what I'm
And,
going to read next week. Is going to be my book report on 1601.
There you go. But there were a lot of other books that were collections of short works. Not every one of them was a novel from beginning to end. But there were travel books. There were wildly fantastic travel books. There were short, kind of unsuccessful novels. A whole bunch.
How did Twain come to Connecticut, of all places, from being in Missouri?
Well, that's a long story that we tell visitors when they come to the Mark Twain house. I'm going to try to
Do we need a bottle of wine for it? Or?
Really, he went from Missouri. He came to Connecticut by way of going west. He went from Missouri out to California, to the Nevada goldfields, out to California. Got an assignment from his newspaper in California. He became a journalist eventually, to travel to Europe and the Holy Land, travel on what it was essentially the first American cruise ship after the Civil War, and then write back funny comments about this too. And he wrote hilarious stories and vivid travel description. He wrote about the innocent Americans versus the sophisticated Europeans, and he made fun of them all. And he came back, and a publisher from Hartford suggested that this be turned into a book, all of these things that he had sent to the newspaper. And so he agreed, and they got together and worked up a long, wonderful travel book called The Innocents Abroad. So he came here first on a business trip. Then he made a lot of friends, fell in love with the place. At the same time, he was falling in love with a young woman from upstate New York named Olivia Langdon, who was herself had connections from Hartford. She had good friends there. So after they married in 1870, they decided it was time, after trying out life in Buffalo, New York, which they did not like at all, they ended up in dear old Hartford. They came and rented a house, looked around at some pieces of land, and finally built the house that you see today on the banks of a river, which is sadly not there anymore because it was put underground during public work projects in the 30s. But
yeah, there's actually a lot of private. I always feel like the Mark Twain house is kind of like on this little postage stamp. There's acreage there, isn't there?
There is, yeah. I mean, there's still a certain amount of acreage.
Is it like 3.5 acres or something?
Oh,
Or?
I think it's more than that. I would say I don't have the exact figure, but we have a new modern visitors center that went up in 2003. There's the carriage house. There's quite an extensive lawn area. We have a parking lot, which is not, I believe, on what used to be Clemens land, but the Clemenses themselves had extensive land. They had a field downhill from the house where cows grazed, and it was quite a rural part of Hartford back then. Now it's Farmington Avenue. It's lots of apartments and businesses.
Absolutely.
But back then, this was there were trees and ponds. And
it was a great time to be in Hartford. Sure.
And it was certainly for a lot of people, certainly the people who lived out in that area. Nook Farm, it was called. This is where Harriet Beecher Stowe settled, and various other people know that nobody reads anymore, but other writers, editors, politicians. It was a lively place, and that's what attracted both Clemenses to the area. And there they built a house. He was just starting out as a best-selling author with this travel book, The Innocents Abroad. He had also done well with his story, The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, a funny story about a frog jumping contest. But it was really his wife who was the heiress who brought the money to the marriage and enabled them to buy the house and to buy the land and to buy the land and to build the house.
Yeah, Clemens himself not very lucky with money. I mean, I have read that he was a big advocate of inventors, but had gone and invested in a whole bunch